What is happening, everybody? TC here with Smoky Mountain Knife Works, smkw.com, and today I've got a very special guest who surprised us in the studio today, and we are super excited. Mr. Ethan Becker.
Hey, buddy.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
It's always, if I'm within a couple 100 miles of here, I'm going to be here.
Absolutely. We really appreciate it. And I'm telling you what, folks, if you haven't had a chance to listen to this man talk, he is a wealth of knowledge and just a phenomenal, not only knife designer, but a wealth of knowledge as far as survival skills goes and just the stories that you have to tell. I mean, I met you for the first time at Blade Show last year and was just enthralled from the first moment I met you. So, and we've talked about, actually getting to meet those people that you've heard of all your life and actually getting to, I guess, soak up the wisdom. And that's something that I don't think gets mentioned enough. And I think sometimes gets not taken advantage of, but maybe taken for granted a little bit. Yeah. I just love hearing the stories you've got to tell and all the things that you've got to tell. So we've got some of your knives right here. But before we get started, if you like this video, folks, smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell, because you never know when somebody like Ethan Becker is going to stop into the studio and talk to us here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and light that up.
You want to talk knives?
Let's talk about some knives. Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, that's one of our favorite things. Now, one of our first introductions here on our channel to your knives, one of the first knives that we featured after I started here, we started our Will It Cut series, which was kind of a torture testing series with this BK-18 right here, the Harpoon Becker, and it performed flawlessly. I mean, this thing was phenomenal, and the things that we did to this knife were outrageous. I mean, not things that you would typically. We hammered it through a brick.
I was a little concerned when I saw that video.
I mean, we hammered this thing through steel cable. We hammered it through a brick, and then after we did all that, we took this knife to Essie's, Randall's Adventure and Training, their advanced bushcrafting class, and used it that entire weekend for advanced bushcrafting, and again performed phenomenally. And that's one design that I got to say, as far as overall, I feel like this is a phenomenal knife design as far as ergonomics. Overall size, it's not too big, it's not too small. It's that Goldilocks knife that you look for, that everybody searches for. My biggest thing is I love hearing the inspiration, because I don't do this. I haven't been involved in this that long. So the inspiration for a knife like this.
Well, I came out with a 16 a few years ago.
Okay.
And one of the things that I've found at age 75 or 76 or whatever I am this week is I'll find somebody else's knife that teaches me something. A lot of people have asked me about how to design knives, and the first thing I do is I tell them to pick up every single knife you see at a gun show or a knife show and feel it and pretend to cut with it and get an idea how it works in your hand. And if it doesn't fit your hand, put it back down.
Right.
And my blades or my handles don't fit everybody's hand, but they seem to do pretty good for a lot of people. So, and one of the things when I first started in the business, I was scared to death that one of my knives would break. I mean, it was a nightmare for me. I'm stubborn. Stuff's got to be tough. And I'm fond of saying, you give me a 5-pound sledgehammer, I can break anything. So, but the older I get, the thinner my knives have gotten. Because what knives are designed to do is to cut things. Now, we make a pry bar, the 3, which is, is literally... there's a video out there somewhere on YouTube of us destroying a Dodge Omni with it. and it broke.
Yep.
It took 3 people.
Wow.
On that loop that holds the door closed.
Right. Yep.
And it was used by a couple of cops down in Louisiana to pry a guy out of a jail cell as the water was coming up.
Oh my goodness, that's insane.
And the guy was huge, okay? Nice guy. I mean, just a sweetheart. But he was like 6'4" and 300 pounds. And he said, Mr. Becker, he said, I'm so sorry I broke your knife. I said, well, here's a new one. He said, I wasn't asking for a new one. I said, we have a guarantee. And he said, really? He said, I want you to know it took 540 pounds of law enforcement to break that knife.
Wow. That's got to give you a sense of pride. I mean.
Oh, it does. And there was another SWAT guy out in Hendersonville, I think in Nevada. I saw at SHOT Show, and he'd managed to break one. He was not a little man.
No, it definitely takes a lot. I mean, so, this one.
But when you use a knife in the woods, I mean, this is when I'm carving stuff. This is what you do to make tent stakes and, fire accessories and all that stuff. And this can't be too long because it's awkward.
Yeah.
And if it's too short, you can't get enough slice in it.
Right.
And this is it turned out, you never know until you cut metal whether you had a good idea or not.
Yeah.
And there's a custom maker up in Vermont, I think it is, named Jim Bensinger. And Bensinger he doesn't think limits really belong in his wheelhouse at all.
Right. And
one of his knives was down at one of my gatherings in Tennessee, and it wasn't more than this big, and it was kind of fat, and it was apple seed ground, and it had a lot of belly. And it cut like a maniac. And I said, there's a lesson in here somewhere.
Right.
And I'm trying to get him to build me he's making some original Fairbairn.
Oh, yeah.
Shanghai Fairbairns. And if you ever get a chance to read about Fairbairn, do it.
Well, and that kind of leads me into my next one. So, speaking of reading and of books, you were talking to me earlier about, I guess, inspiration, especially when it comes to knife design. And one of the favorites out there, and one of my favorites certainly, is the Kephart design. And we've got your BK62 here, Kephart. And, that's just a classic design. And you were talking about the inspiration behind that being Kephart himself and the books that he wrote about survival.
Well, Kephart wrote in the 1890s until 2022 when he died. And almost every book on camping, woodcraft, bushcraft, etc., is derivative of him. And so, you know Mark Zaleski.
Uh-huh.
Mark runs Knife Magazine, there are 2 knife magazines you should subscribe to, and one of them is Knife Magazine.
Yep.
And he's also a dealer, and he also is an acknowledged expert on American Bowie knives. So every once in a while, because he's mostly a collector, he would come out to my house with some old knives, and not super valuable knives, that he could see how they worked.
Right.
So I had seen this knife on his table for a couple years. I never picked it up. I never took my own damn advice.
We're circling back to that now.
Yes, we're circling back to that. So anyway, I looked at him. There's a little piece of poplar, and I was just looked up at him, and I said, okay, how much of a second mortgage am I going to have to take out for this thing? So I told him, I said, look, how much cash do you have to have? And I said, what I'd like to do is you go down into my collection and you make a pile until you figure it's big enough. And if there's anything I'm emotionally invested in, it don't go in the pile. So that's how I got the knife. So anyway, that led to I took it down to Blade Show because I couldn't help but share a little bit. And there was tremendous excitement, much more excitement than I expected. And the president of K-Bar we were standing around in the pit.
Right.
Infamous pit.
Oh, yeah.
And Joe Flowers came up. And anybody who knows Joe, he's a pretty good knife designer. And
he learned from somebody I know. Yeah.
He and I go back a ways. Anyway, so Joe comes up and he starts jumping up and down as Joe does every once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
And goes, have you got a knife? Have you got the knife? Have you got the knife? And I showed it to him and it got a crowd instantly. And a couple minutes later, John said, what do you think we ought to do? And I said, we ought to make some. He said, I think you're right.
Absolutely.
So this is as close as I could get to the original using modern manufacturing techniques. The outline of the knife is pretty close to exact. And the original had a very interesting grind. It was a double apple seat.
Okay.
So you've got the apple seat here, and then it apple seated to the spine.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is allow you to easily adjust a cut.
Yep.
And I wish we could have done it. This is as close as I could get, and it's a pretty good knife. But all the modern bushcraft people says a knife ought to be about that big.
Right.
All right. Now I tried to. I went through Zalewski's catalogs. He's got a research library that is pretty nice.
I can only imagine.
And he collects everything. He collects every catalog he can find, all this other stuff. I could not find anything which historically that came close to it.
Right.
But he was a Swiss German, and he was and he may have. I don't think he had a different knife. I think this is all his idea.
Right.
And if it is, it's very original. That's damn difficult to do in this business.
Yeah, no kidding. Especially this day and time. Like everything, it seems like has been done in some way, shape, or fashion.
I came up with the idea for an absolutely fantastic blade shape. Fantastic. And a fantastic handle was for a fighting knife. And I woke up in the middle of the night, which I don't do, in a hotel room and found a piece of paper and pencil and sketched it out. I got home and I was looking through an old encyclopedia of arms and armor, and all of a sudden I'm going, oh, well, let's see, circa 300 BC? I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. You're not quite as original as you think you are, Becker. Not even close.
Right. But it was original in your mind.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Except maybe I'd seen it before when I'd been going through there. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
And, but what I think of that design now is not, I don't think it was a very good idea.
But and that's one thing that's really cool too, because I mean we all draw off our own inspirations, and yeah, nothing may be completely original anymore, but at the same time, there's something that inspires us to make maybe a little bit of a change to something that we've seen before or handled before. And there's a reason behind that, just like you were talking about with the BK18, making it that size with that thumb ramp on the back side and making it just the right size belly right there, so that you can work it.
Point.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one place where I've not, in my own mind, if the 16 had a point, I wouldn't have done that.
Right.
Because, when you're picking nut meats out and stuff like that, that helps.
And that's another one right there that is a phenomenal design. I mean, you're looking at pretty close to the same size, but if you want something just a little bit shallower there, I mean, that is a fantastic design. Nice drop point on that. I mean, when you look at your line of knives from K-Bar, you're really looking at, across the board, a knife for every purpose. And I've gotten, for myself personally, I've gotten to where I've bought more fixed blades lately than anything else, because I've really been into them. And each one of them has a different purpose and a different meaning and a different intention behind it. Just like this one's not going to have the same intention as this BK7 is. Right. But each of them has their place and each of them has their purpose. There are things that the BK7 can do that this one can't. Yeah. And so you can't, I guess what I'm trying to say is you can't really get into the mindset of you want a knife that can do everything, because that doesn't exist out there. Of course you want the knife that does everything. But you know what? As far as after 40 years of designing and being fairly successful at designing knives, there ain't no one knife I know of that will do everything. Exactly. I mean, when all is said and done, you can do everything you have to do with a broken rock. Yeah. That's how it all got started, right? Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it's aesthetics. I mean, what appeals to your eye. Yep. Which is one of the reasons fantasy knives took off. Oh yeah, for years, and you can tell me much better whether they still sell well. Well, I can tell you, for me personally, I mean, I'm an '80s kid. I grew up in the '80s, so fantasy knives were one of those things that were huge then. Yes, and I was really into the Gilhibben, all that kind of the fantasy daggers and all that. Absolutely loved it. My parents thought I was nuts, and they hated that that's what I wanted, because my dad's like, no, you need to get a case knife. You need to get something you can use, blah. But I still, it looked cool. It appealed to my eye. Yes. So yeah, and that's why I love this industry, because there's something for everybody. Yes, there is. And there's inspiration for us all. And these are all, at the end of the day, these are all tools that make specific tasks easier to do. Yeah. And my everyday carry is one of these, and a Swiss Army knife, because scissors are important. Oh, my goodness. Greg, how many times have I said that in the last, couple of weeks? Scissors. I tell people all the time, you don't realize how important they are and how much you can use them, and how useful they are, until you carry them on you every day, and then you're like, I don't know how I lived without them. I used them every day when I was in the recording business when I was a kid, because we were always putting together stuff. Yep. And I used to cut the shielding on coax. Uh-huh. And I wore out at Tinker about every 6 months. I mean, I just used them to death. Yeah. And because it was on me and it was there, and you use the tool you have with you. Right. Exactly. Now, let's talk a little bit about, you brought something special with you today, and we were talking about your experience with Joe Flowers, and we were talking about some people down. Experience. Yes, he is. He absolutely is. I mean, the energy that he exudes is contagious. It is tiring to watch him sometimes. I mean, I get exhausted. Right. When
when we were down at the North Carolina do, the first couple of years it was just guys. Then some of the wives showed up, and then wives and kids and all that stuff. And they would just give all the little kids to Joe.
Oh yeah, I can absolutely see that.
And about 2 hours later, they're all begging to go home and take a nap.
Because he's worn the kids out.
He just worried. Do I have to go back out? And they're all begging to go home, and he's going, well, let's go build a shelter now. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. And it was absolutely, and Joe's one of the nicest guys I know.
He
He's
is.
a sweetheart, and he's very, very skillful. He knows what the heck he's talking about.
Yeah.
And he's, but yeah, Joe.
It's like I guess I've never put this into words, but it's like he's on a journey and he wants so bad to bring everyone along with him.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's perfectly done.
To teach everyone about everything that he knows. And that's what I love about him. Yeah.
He knows a lot.
I mean, he's so willing to share that knowledge in a world today where so many people want to just hold it all in. No, this is a secret. This is my secret.
Yes.
He is one of those people that he loves to share that with everybody. Yeah. And I love that about him.
He's a great person.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you really look at this knife, it has everything. It has a good skinning section.
Yeah.
And his original, which is over at the Western North Carolina Museum, has been used to death. I mean, he sharpened it on creek rocks.
Wow.
And not to say anything nay about the great Kephart, but you might as well take a little bit better care of it. I guess. I don't know. But one of the most important things in knives is to have the knife so it orients so you know where the cutting edge is all the time. And you'll notice that most of my knives have an egg-shaped profile.
Right.
Cross section. And that, to me, has been one of the best, very best ideas I stole from somebody else.
Well, you can pick that up with your eyes closed.
Yeah, and find the edge.
You can easily find where that edge is. Like you don't need any assistance. You don't have to look at it. And I mean,
advise cutting at such low,
low visibility
levels, but it really helps when you're doing all of the little things all the little manipulations that you do. And I am actually on a kind of a pilgrimage over to Bryson City. I'm leaving here to go over there. There's this weekend is Kephart Days, and the great-granddaughter of Horace, Libby Kephart Hargrave, is going to be there, and I'm going to give a little lecture on the knife and stuff. And
that's awesome.
I should have kissed Zaleski more often. He's just, I mean, this knife has opened up doors for me.
Yeah.
And Kephart's life when I was growing up, my folks were from St. Louis, and he was the librarian at the Mercantile Library there for several years. And my mom used to talk about the Mercantile.
Wow.
And what a great place it was. Kephart brought music and art and other things into that library. And it was a center of culture in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And on the weekends, he was off in the woods in an area that my grandmother had a cabin. And when I moved to Tennessee, I moved 8 miles west of his first campsite at Hazel Creek.
Wow. That's a small world.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that I've hung out with people whose ancestors hung out with Kephart.
That's cool.
And I never really thought about it until...
Right.
But it's just... and going back and hanging out and getting a chance to give a talk over there, just absolutely, I feel so honored I can't hardly stand it.
That's awesome. And, from a basic knife standpoint, this is going to be, as far as I'm concerned, the perfect design for sharpening, especially out in the field.
Yeah.
It's not going to be extremely difficult to sharpen and put an edge back on it, like you said, like he would with river stones.
Yeah.
It's not a incredibly complex grind. It's going to be a very simple edge to just strop back up.
I made my bones on curves and recurves.
Uh-huh.
And not every idea I've had has worked out real well.
And I mean, more complex blades are fine for people that can sharpen those. I've got a few recurves that I really like.
Yeah.
It takes me a lot more concentration to sharpen them properly.
Yeah.
But something like this for a survival knife, you can't beat that, especially if you're actually in that situation, using those survival skills and needing to sharpen that back up. You don't want to be sitting there spending a whole lot of time sharpening your knife when you've got other stuff you need to be doing.
You can't sharpen it with this. You shouldn't be carrying it.
Exactly.
So, and we also make replacement micarta handles. So if you're planning on using this one a lot, the micarta makes a certain amount of sense.
Right.
Aesthetically, I love the walnut.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, that's just an absolutely perfect. To me, walnut, as a woodworker, walnut is where it's at.
It gives it a sense of class.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe the originals, because I have one of the 3 known originals.
Yeah.
Has chestnut handles. Wow. But I'm not about to do some scraping and doing and trying to figure it out.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about this pack that you got.
All right.
You got here with you. Now, this thing is really cool.
One of the reasons I got in the knife business, I designed my original knife was called a Mishax, and it was a kind of a modified Kukris. And so I was a big Kukris fan, and I sent 2 of my Kukris with friends to Vietnam. One of them didn't come back because the blade came out as the guy was chopping on something, and he said, I watched it go right to the middle of the river. And the other one, the guy left it behind with somebody because he figured that was a nice thing to do. And so they both said that the handle sucked, the steel was really crummy, and the sheath was disgusting, and especially in a jungle environment. And so I started to scull around and came up with a Mishax, and I was making mountain climbing equipment back then. And I saw an article in a magazine, a review of a guy down in Texas, a custom maker who had made a couple of Kukris. And boy, I got hot, buddy. I was on the phone. It was long enough ago, it may have been a dial phone. Anyway.
I remember those.
Yes. So anyway, I talked to the guy, and he said, I don't know. He said, I don't know whether I ever want to make another one of those damn things. And he said, but if it did, I'd have to get $400 for one. Well, this is 1973, 74. That was a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Well, I had a whole rack of heat-treatable steel in the back. I had a grinder, and the heat treater was across the street. So I said, well, thank you very much, sir. I wish I could remember the guy's name. He was a nice fella. And so I came up with a couple of proof-of-concept prototypes, and I did everything wrong. I didn't know about grinding machines, but I knew about mills because I used one every day, and I knew about and CNC was brand new back then.
Right.
So I made up about 20 of them, a lifetime supply. And I guess I made 100 that first time. And I started selling them, and they were selling reasonably well. So I went back to the drawing board and figured I'd put something other than a couple of walnut slabs on it. And so I got a mold designed, and the largest stamping press in the city of Cincinnati was used to dump them out. They were used to making car parts.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, I was in the knife business. I had no business being in the knife business, none whatsoever, because what I knew about the industry was nothing. I mean, I knew a few names.
Right.
But that was about it.
Wow.
So I had met the Collins brothers at a sporting goods show, and I had bought one of their knives, and I had met Blackie and his brother, and it turned out I went down to a show in Atlanta, a distributor show, to show it to the guys at Brigade Quartermaster, and they said, meet me at the Camillus booth. So I showed up, and I felt nervous as hell because I'm at a Camillus, I'm at somebody else's booth, trying to sell a knife,
right,
that they didn't make. And who should show up but Blackie Collins, who went to high school with Wallace Fennell. Now Wallace was the guy I was talking to, and Wallace said, "Blackie, come on over here and see what this boy's come up with." And I knew who Blackie Collins was.
Right.
I mean, I was ignorant, but I wasn't that ignorant. So Collins takes it, and he hefts it, and he looks at it, and he says, "Will you take a purchase order for 2 of these?" He said, "One of these is going in a truck, and one of them's going in a boat."
Wow.
You could have knocked me over with a very small feather. And that started a friendship with Wallace that lasted until he died. We hunted from Argentina to Alaska.
Wow.
And but he was a great he sold for Gerber and he sold for Camillus, and he was an incredible guy.
Absolutely. That's really cool.
So anyway, I ended up in the knife business, and I've been happy about it ever since.
Nice. That's a great introduction into the knife business.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about Blackie Collins. I've got one of my favorite knives that I've collected is actually a Blackie Collins auto from ProTech.
Oh, yeah.
That one of the little tricky knives that it's not the button.
Uh-huh.
It's actually the gravity lock.
Right.
I absolutely love that knife, and that's the one that I take to the bar so that I can win bar bets there. If you can open this knife and then close it back, then I'll buy you a beer. If not, then you got to buy me one.
There you go. Well, Collins was truly a genius. I mean, he had a sense of space, small spaces, that was incredible. I guess a study of shapes is topology.
Yeah.
He had it down, but he designed packaging, really clever packaging and stuff. I mean, he did
one of those people that could see
Yes.
things in 3 dimensions without actually having it in front of them. Like he could visualize all 3 dimensions all at the same time, which is
Sometimes I think he worked in a 4th and 5th dimension.
oh, yeah, no doubt.
But he was an interesting guy.
Yeah.
It's funny. He's the only person who had 3 patent attorneys on speed dial. Because he'd go around a show and he'd go,
Wow. That's insane. That's crazy.
But anyway, let's see, the pack. So the Kukris knives, I sent the Kukris knife to a buddy of mine, who'd been one of the guys that sent over there. And he said, Ethan, he said, it'd be a good idea if, he said, the knife is nice and everything. But he said, what you really need to do is design something to replace that damned Alice pack. So I said, oh, okay. So I've been a backpacker and been camping since age 5, primitive camping since age 5, and I've spent a little time in the woods. And so I did some reading and some other things about how operations were done in Vietnam, the special ops guys, across the border guys. So I came up with this, and from my own experience with a big frame pack in a rhododendron hell one hot August afternoon, I said, okay, this thing can't be any wider than you are.
Exactly.
When you're swimming across a laurel hill,
right,
you're done.
It makes a big difference.
So anyway, the biggest thing is designing useful ways to organize your gear without being too specialized.
Right.
So originally these side pockets were designed for a canteen and a canteen cup. And now they'll hold a 2-quarter.
Okay.
And there are also, all the pockets on this thing are designed so you have tunnels.
Nice.
That go all the way through. So if you got a machete you don't use all the time, but you want to have it with you, or an axe or something else that you're lugging backcountry, it fits right down in there. And the the back pockets, I don't know if we can get a decent look.
There we go, yeah.
Not. And so these guys were originally designed to carry MP5 mags.
Okay.
Lots of MP5, too many MP5 mags. And and it's got a storm collar. And the inside has 3 pockets. One of them is a long pocket, and then 2 short side pockets for organizing your gear.
Okay.
And then the lid has an internal pocket and obviously 3 external pockets. And I have been told that they fit claymores really well. So, and the pack was originally made by Eagle Industries, and John Carver did just a fantastic, he took my idea and made it better. And then when he sold to Blackhawk, I think it was, they didn't like, I think they bought the company because they didn't like John. They wanted him gone. So they discontinued a lot of his good ideas, and they continued to make it, but they made it as a Molly only. It was a single bag, and you could hang stuff all over it. Well, if you're doing, and that came around when people were doing desert.
Right.
That makes sense in the desert. You can organize everything. If you have a lot of extra stuff hanging off and you're bushwhacking.
Oh, yeah.
No.
You're getting hung up on everything.
Every little thing in the world.
And then you've got some stuff that might be sensitive equipment that's going to be getting wet, and you want it covered. So this is fantastic. So
SEAL RTOs used them for years, and that's what radio guys are called in the SEAL business. And so one of the things that the Alice pack, which I tried backpacking with, not many times, is it lacked this.
The handle, the carry handle.
A handle, you can hang it on. You can hang it on a branch.
Yep.
Or whatever, and you can, or just moving it from place to place around a campsite.
Yeah.
And this has a very, very comfortable series of suspension.
The padding here is nice and breathable.
Yeah. And it has a channel here that will allow airflow.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true of this. You can take this off, of course. I wouldn't want to go very far with it loaded down without it, you understand.
Exactly, yeah.
My first backpacking was done with before they had invented waist bags.
The waist bag.
Waist
Oh,
bags.
Wow. Whew.
That's just why
That gets exhausting.
it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts quick. And I pretty much I had a Camp Trails, which was they were the guys that first came out with a comfortable padded belt.
Right.
And that's the one that had me trapped on top of the laurel hill. But the guy who's making these is a guy named Tom Graziano, and his company's called Bongo Gear. And
so, folks, let us know what you think about this in the comments down below. I'm really digging this. I think this is really cool. My fiance and I do a lot of backpacking, a lot of hiking up here in the Smokies, and I think this is perfect for that. Absolutely perfect for that.
And also, it comes in orange.
Oh, nice.
For wildland fire guys.
Yeah.
And SAR guys.
Yeah.
So
that is awesome.
But it's been tested. I mean, the Jungle Warfare Center used to buy them by the hundreds. Flowers called me one day, and he says, somebody's going to be giving you a call named Graziano. I said, well, who is he? And he said, well, he was on one of my things, and he loves your pack. He's thinking about trying to bring it back. And I said, oh, okay, tell him to call.
Absolutely.
So he's a super nice guy. Oh, there's a frame.
Nice.
Internal.
To give it that
frame.
rigidity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's flexible enough you don't hardly notice that it's there.
Right.
So
that is awesome. Well, Ethan, thank you so much for bringing that by, and thank you for coming by and talking to us.
Well,
we really appreciate it.
You know, whenever I get within 200 miles a year, it's like a magnet.
Absolutely. It just draws you right in.
You got it. So,
folks, let us know what you think down in the comments below. And as always, folks, it's been me, TC, here with Smoky Mountain Knife Works, along with Ethan Becker. And remember, if it cuts like a Becker, then we carry it.
Saturday nights, a live show, unless I got a hot date, which at my age are kind of lukewarm. Well, I have to say that after an intro like that, I better be on my best. I'll get you later.
I gotta ask.
Looking for a kiss?
I gotta. So.
I was going through a divorce at the time and was not swimming in money. Divorces will do that to you. Don't. Work it out. It's cheaper. So the best you can find is in the 1940s Hitler-Jugend knife.
Right.
Which we would prefer not to talk about. I had more fun with Wallace than you could possibly have without somebody of the opposite sex.